spend this time. Greetings and good morning to each one of you, and welcome to our daily devotion from the book of Proverbs. We've been studying from chapter 26, Proverbs chapter 26, and God has been giving us wonderful instructions from His holy word, instructions that guide us to face various situations in life, various kinds of people that we meet, and how we should relate and deal with them. Chapter 26, at the starting, we saw the wise man telling us about how we should relate to fools and sluggards, lazy people, and how we see them as those who would distract us, but through some very wonderful natural illustrations, the wise man told us how important it is to keep away from such attitudes, such kind of people. And then we talked about the nature of these fools and how they behave. These people who lack divine wisdom and what their life would be. And in our study last couple of days, the wise man instructed us about avoiding certain people who are devoid of divine wisdom, people who meddle and quarrel and are anxious to join situations where problems are going on. And he also warned us about those foolish people who try to make of themselves like practical joker who causes trouble, but all and says that all of this is simply a joke. Today we will see the wise man telling us again about another very important group of people that we should be careful of. How dangerous is the work that they carry on. We will look at verses 20 to 22 of Proverbs chapter 26. Proverbs chapter 26, verses 20 to 22. Reading from the Holy Scriptures, where there is no word, the fire goes out, and where there is no talebearer, strife ceases. As charcoal is to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are like tasty trifles, and they go down into the inmost body. We are going to see today this dangerous work that a talebearer carries on. A talebearer is one who carries information, volunteers to carry information from one point to another point, one person to another person. Even though their service is not solicited, still these talebearers volunteer to do this work. And if their work, as if it is so important, but the wise man tells us, where there is no talebearers, strife will cease. The wise man is telling us the positive effect of a negative work. Tale bearing certainly aggravates, aggravates strife, contention, and problems, misunderstandings, rivalry, and hatred. All of these things are the negative consequences of a talebearer. And by bearing tales, gossiping, we have talked about this earlier, the wise man telling us to keep away from such things. And here he compares such activity of tale bearing, and if there is a fire, and if it should be going on, just as it needs wood to catch fire and the fire to continue, likewise, a tale bearer, by his activity, he will promote, he will propagate strife among the people. Strife would not continue, misunderstandings would not last unless there are tale bearers who carry words from one place to another, and in the process, they may flavor the message that they are carrying from one place to another. They may change information, but anyways, their work makes them creative in some sense. But the very act of carrying message from one point to another point, for which there is really no reason. Nobody has asked a talebearer to carry a message. We have seen earlier a person who carries message is to be one who is reliable, who is trustworthy, and who is faithful to share his message. Such kind of messengers are certainly appreciated. But here are talebearers on the other side. These people who simply volunteer, who may not even know the full intent of a message, but they're desirous to share something. And many times they want to be the first to carry message, whether it is good or bad. James, describing the power of words, even to set a destructive fire, says in James chapter 3 and verse 6, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. A tongue is to set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. James uses rather strong words. He compares the tongue to a fire. Words are spoken, of course, we know, by the use of our sound apparatus in our body, and tongue being the important organ in our mouth, along with our lips, along with our jaws, and the whole oral cavity together would work to produce sound. And words that are spoken many times are attributed to the tongue, because the tongue has a significant role, though. And therefore, the wise James is warning us, be careful of your tongue. In other words, of your words. It can cause strife, fire, and iniquity among people. The tongue is so set among its members that it defiles a whole body by speaking that which is not appropriate and right. A tongue can defile the whole body. Imagine a small organ by its irresponsible use and speaking words which are not appropriate, not true and right, but simply bearing tales without much thinking and what its consequences could be, can have devastating consequences. Just as a whole body would have to suffer because of the irrational work of a tongue, it can set on fire a course of nature and even set on fire by hell. This is serious message that Apostle James is telling us. But in order to continue the process of tale bearing, tongue, the organ that produces words and sound, actually needs to be heard. You need a second person with whom you can gossip. And so the ear of the hearer is also important. So you have the tongue of the one who delivers the message and the ear of the one who hears. But when the word of a tale bearer reaches the hearer, that's when the process is complete. You know, it is very interesting in this process of communication. The one who speaks may even change the content of the message and uses his own words, which may not be representative, and the one who hears may understand it differently. And so you see how, as a message passes from somebody's mouth to another person's ear, and from that person's ear translated through his mouth to somebody else's ear, there can be severe changes in this whole process. Remember playing a game called Whisper, when you could speak into somebody's ears and that person can tell the same thing he heard, or however he heard, or whatever he wants to say. And finally, at the end of, or the last person who receives the message, in comparison to what has started, sometimes is so different. This is how consequential sometimes tale bearing can be. The tale bearer becomes an agent of discord. If nobody hears what he is saying, well, his message will stop propagating. But the strange thing is, gossip very easily and very quickly spreads, and even across space, even long distances. And of course, we know the modern time through the use of telephones, that's past generation, and now through sending online messages at rapid speed, almost instantaneously, messages cross oceans to reach the other side. And so you see how consequential the one who starts gossip and the one who hears the gossip, and then the process which continues. And so the law that is operative treats both of them equally. The one who received the information, or the one who receives that stolen goods, knowing that it is stolen, he too will be hanged along with the one who stole it. The one who stole it will be hanged, as well as the one who received that stolen goods. This law, therefore, treats equally one who carries tale-bearing and one who receives tale-bearing. Both are treated at par. And so we see here how contention can be kindled, how strife can kept ignited. And this all happens because of the gossip that passes on from one ear to their mouth to another ear. And so such kind of activity is one which causes such great discord, great deformation. And so we are called upon to be very careful in this activity that is carried out very much in this world, and especially by those who do not have much to do. People who are not busy, occupied with work that they're doing, but always waiting somehow to gather some information somewhere and to pass it on to somebody. And many times these people feel that they are doing a great work, and sometimes they are proud of knowing information earlier than anybody else. And so this kind of activity is certainly dangerous, and it can cause such great strife that we should be always prepared to face such situations, and that we should never participate in this kind of an activity. The wise man is teaching us in clear terms that we should always be wise, to avoid such people who indulge in tale-bearing, people who would not consider the foolishness of bearing tales. Just as fire is fueled by word, likewise tale-bearing fuels strife, misunderstandings, rivalry, and animosity. We are called upon to very carefully abhor such activities. This is also notified in the book of Deuteronomy by these people who tell gossips, are also, the Hebrew word includes those who grumble, those who criticize at back of another person. They are backbiters, criticizing behind the back and saying something else in front of them. In Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 27, the law tells us, And you murmured in your tents and said, because the Lord hated us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to give us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Having seen God's miraculous leading and working through the years of their sojourn in the wilderness, when they're faced with the enemies, Amorites, the children of Israel went secretly into their tents to murmur, to gossip, to slander, accusing God for hating them because he brought them out of Egypt. And is it God's intention that he should now give them into the hands of their enemies, the Amorites, to destroy them? Many times gossip questions truth. And here are the children of Israel questioning God's good intention. And so God, he says, I hate such things. When these people are secretly gossiping quietly in their tents, thinking that Moses or Aaron would not hear about it, but God, who knows what they speak in their secrecy, God can hear and now warns them that God hates such people. We have seen earlier in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 8, the words of a whisperer. These are the talebearers, are like delicious morsels. You know, when you hear people passing on gossip, you can see how juicy the situation and the message is, that you're very easily drawn to it, and you seem to be almost enjoying it like a delicious morsel of food. And certainly, just as food would go from your mouth to your entire body, so likewise, gossip that you speak in your mouth can have influence upon your whole body. It is a contagious nature of gossip that is even more hurtful. And this is echoed by Apostle James in chapter 3, verse 5 to 6. Again, pointing to the tongue. Listen to what James says in chapter 3, verse 5 to 6. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. Just as a small fire begins with just a spark or one firebrand, which can burn a great forest. Likewise is the tongue, which is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. It can envelop the whole world. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. What we speak with our mouth will have consequences in the rest of our body. People will punish us, and it will be like as if you are burnt in hell. Paul again warns about the evil caused by the wrong use of our tongue. He writes in Galatians chapter 5, verse 14 and 15, for the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. How beautifully the Lord has summarized the law. The first four as love to God and the last 6 as love to our fellow human beings, our neighbors. And it says you should love your neighbor as yourself and love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. But, verse 15, if you do contrary, but if you bite and devour one another, telling gossip, slander, as busybodies, carrying tales, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. This kind of activity of passing malicious information can even cause fire that can burn and consume one another. How succinctly Paul is sharing with us the consequences of such kind of behavior. Instead, we are called to love our neighbors as yourself. And when you love your neighbor as yourself, you do nothing against them. If whatever you're doing to them, it is just as good as you're doing to yourself. And so we are called upon to be careful never to indulge in such kind of activity. A quarrelsome person, in verse 21, a person who is always prone to fighting. He is anxious to argue. Who is always waiting to give an excuse to start a fight. By their gossip and slander and their speech that is associated with whispering. This is simply like adding fuel to the fire, enhancing disagreements that would rise through some kind of misunderstanding. Instead of trying to quell down such hurtful experiences, gossip can only trigger and increase and set a situation aflame. So we are called upon not to let our lives be tainted and our lives ever be indulged in tale-bearing. For this only makes the embers more hot and the relationship between human beings only become more aggressive. Paul, in his ministry, met one such person in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 14 and 15. He talks about one Alexander, the coppersmith. This coppersmith was used to making objects of their gods and made great money. But when Paul preached Jesus Christ and said that we should not worship idols, this coppersmith and his business was at stake. And so he went ahead to cause trouble for Paul, and he was severely beaten by the people. He says, Paul is reminding and telling them, be careful of such people who cause damage through their quarrelsome remarks. Paul says, Alexander the coppersmith did me great harm. The Lord repay him according to his deeds. Beware of him yourself, for he strongly opposes our message. Here is this coppersmith who did deeds which were so repulsive opposing the message that the apostles were preaching. And Paul says, God will repay him for what he has done. Certainly, Paul had to suffer because of this person. The Bible writers continue to tell us about how we should avoid any such wicked talk. In the book of Jude, chapter 1, verse 19, it is these who cause divisions, worldly people devoid of the Spirit, these people who bear tales are those who are causing divisions. Certainly, tale bearing makes distinction between those who know the truth and those who are following the wrong. And such people are those who do not have the Spirit of God working in their lives. John, in writing about such kind of people in third epistle of John, chapter 1, verse 10, so if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us. Here is referring to Diotrephes, who was known for words that stirred up trouble. And so Apostle John, writing about him, he says, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us, and not content with that. He refused to welcome the brothers and also stop those who want to and puts them out of the church. Some of these kind of people seem to be even in the church, talking wicked things against God's servants. Instead of welcoming, they only refuse to welcome God's people and stop those who are preaching God's message. You see how through such kind of activity, we can even cause serious trouble and problems and dissensions. And so gossip, such juicy presentation of sensationalized information, is so tempting for us to hear and share. And these are things that can actually keep people busy rather than doing things which are spiritual. Such gossip and tale bearing only causes spiritual death. Hearing such words, engaging in passing on gossip, will have a deeper effect in our lives. At one time, the gospel was sweet when we heard it, but when we do not share the gospel to others and do likewise share gossip, your experience could only become bitter. And so Paul is warning us, don't be idlers, don't gossip and be like busybodies. Busy doing what? Sharing gossip. These could in no way enhance the spreading of the gospel, but only bringing disrepute to God's work. And so we are strictly called upon to give up gossip and never to participate and never even to get close to being part of tale bearing. Paul, writing to the Galatians, says, keep watch of yourselves. Even sometimes without our knowledge, we may be drawn and attracted to this kind of an enterprise. Don't be tempted, but rather, he tells us, we should be careful to do what God desires of us. Let us be careful. What we entertain, the same will have influence upon us, and our whole bodies and our life will show signs of what we speak to others. Let not this kind of an activity ever draw us or attract us. Thus, indulging can only bring shame and reproach to God and enhance rivalry, strife, and contempt. Let not these evil experiences come into the lives of God's people by wrongfully indulging in tale-bearing. Certainly, very important lesson comparing to a fire that is rekindled and burns and finally breaks down and burns out everything. Let us not be part of such experiences, but sharing the good news, saving people from their sinful lives. God bless each one as we continue to be true bearers of light and the truth and gospel, and never to be part of tale bearing. God bless you and have a wonderful day.